What's going on, guys? Stefan, S&E's Garage. Behind me, we have not my Camry. For a lot of you people that have subscribed, dying for some Hyundai content, here we have it. This is a 2018 LF Sonata. This Sonata was made from 2015 all the way to 2019, and in 2018 it received a minor facelift. So this is actually a car that I am very familiar with. This is one of my customers. My dealership that I was at gives free oil changes, so they go to them for oil changes. But whenever this car needs work, they come to me because I'm very familiar with these cars. They liked my work ethic when I was at the dealer, and they asked me if I would continue to service their car, and to that I said absolutely. So the dealership told them that they are in need of brakes, and they just wanted me to verify that, and they wanted me to go over the rest of the car, and if in fact it does need brakes, we're going to get those brakes ordered for them, and we're going to take care of it. So let's start under the hood. I'm going to pop the hood. We'll check all the fluids that we can check. This car has electronic power steering, and it does not have a transmission dipstick, so we cannot check that, but we'll get into it. But real quick, let's just see. This car has 61,907 miles on it, so it is coming up on being due for a transmission service. I am going to recommend that to them. We'll see if they want to do it or not. Maybe we'll do that next time because, you know, they are having to spend some money on the brakes. So let's get the hood open. Let's go over some common problems that these cars have. Let's check the fluids. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull the dipstick here, wipe it clean. We're going to check the oil. These are known for oil consumption, so we do want to make sure that it is not burning any oil because that will accelerate rod bearing failure. And as you can see, if anything, it's a little bit overfilled, but it does have oil in it, so we're okay there. Our coolant, let me get you off the tripod. Our coolant is between the low and the full. So that's good. They could use a little top up on washer fluid. I'll throw some in there for them. And we'll check the filters. Check the air filter on this. Super easy. Just lift this guy up. This is actually an aftermarket filter, it looks like. This is a K&N. So we shouldn't have any issues here, but let's pull it out and check it for them. It's a little dirty. I'm going to tell them maybe we can clean it up and get a K&N cleaning kit. But it is not something that we need to replace. So really, under the hood of this car, there isn't really too many fluids. Like I said, this car has electronic power steering, so we don't have any type of power steering fluid. But we are going to look at our two belts. You have one belt back here that drives the water pump. This is the water pump back there. We're just going to take a peek at that belt, make sure there's no cracks, rips, or tears. And we are also going to check for any coolant residue underneath that water pump. And we do not see any, so I'm okay with that. Everything looks good there. Here we have your alternator and air conditioning belt. That's the tensioner. Here's the alternator, compressors down there. Belt looks all right. No cracking, no rips, tears. Everything looks okay. Now these are rather known for valve cover leaks. And when the valve cover gasket leaks, it leaks on the back of the engine and drips down on the exhaust manifold, so you'll almost always smell it. So let's go ahead and get our flashlight. Just take a peek. You'll see everything looks nice and dry. Under here, we have our GDI pump. This is what makes these cars so noisy at idle, is these things just scream. Actually, let me fire it up real quick. I'm going to pull this damper off here, and we'll show you exactly how that GDI pump sounds. So here we have the singing noise of the GDI pump along with the GDI injectors on this 2.4 liter Theta 2 engine. This is the normal chatter that these engines make. As you saw, they do have a damper to try and lessen that noise along with the insulation under the engine cover. So they do a nice job of trying to quiet that down. This pump is actually a common point of failure on these cars. What actually happens is the seal in the pump goes bad, and then gasoline can leak into the crankcase, and it'll actually start throwing System 2 rich codes when it gets, you know, pretty advanced. And if you don't catch it in time, you will actually thin the oil out to the point where it can start wiping out the bearings in the engine. So always with these cars, check your oil. Make sure the oil level isn't increasing. And also make sure it doesn't smell excessively like gasoline, because that is one of the telltales that your GDI pump has failed. And you'll actually see that this car does have some indications of rodent activity, so we're just going to give it a once over, make sure that there's no other nests, so to say, in here. Now let's address the giant elephant in the room here with the Theta 2 engine. These engines are recalled. There is a class action lawsuit against these engines, and as long as you've had all of your recalls and updates done, there is a lifetime unlimited mileage warranty on this engine for rod bearing failure. So if your rod bearings on this engine fail, you bring it to Hyundai. As long as you can show them maintenance records and you have all the updates done, you'll get a new reman engine from Hyundai. So I personally would not own one of these because I don't like being stranded, but do keep in mind that if you do own one and they do fail, you're most likely going to be covered. Now there are two other common failure points under the hood of this car that I would like to mention. First and foremost being this guy right here. This is actually an electronic cam phaser. So on the intake side of this engine, this is the intake side, you'll see your plastic intake manifold, and back here is our exhaust manifold that's metal. So the intake cam phaser is basically an electric motor, and under this cap are two metal copper brushes that rub on the contact face of that cam cap. A cam phaser, and that area is supposed to be free of oil. Now there is a little seal in the nose of the camshaft that prevents oil from getting into this, and that seal, especially in cold climates, is notorious for failing. We see a ton of these in the winter months. This will actually fill up with oil. You'll get a check engine light, and you'll have some sporadic idling issues and drivability problems. That was covered under Hyundai's powertrain warranty, so if you have an issue with that, you're the original owner and have under 100,000 miles and the car is less than 10 years old, bring it in, it's covered. Like I said, we did see a ton of them. Now, one other common failure point on these, I actually did a video on replacing one of these, is this VCM, the variable charge motion motor. There are little plastic gears in that, and what happens is as the intake gets filled with carbon, like we mentioned before, this is a GDI engine. Carbon cleanings are super important on these. Those fins can actually begin to get clogged, and as this motor tries to actuate them, the gears in this will actually strip. And you'll see right down here, if I can get you in there, let me see if I can get us down there. Let's see. That's going to be almost impossible with this intake in the way. But there's a little, basically an arm that goes down into the intake manifold. And what that does is, like I said, it opens and closes those flaps. And when these gears strip, you'll actually get a check engine light for this. And most of the time there are no drivability issues, but if they get stuck closed, you can have some surging and things like that. So that is another common failure point with these. Also, with the NOx sensor detection system update, the NOx sensors on these can be overly sensitive and throw these things into limp mode when there is actually no internal engine failure. So definitely, if you have one of these, stay up to date on your carbon cleanings. I do have a video up on doing a carbon cleaning, not on one of these, on a different vehicle, but it's the same process. Now this is not a turbocharged engine. They do offer a 2.0 liter turbo with this vehicle. The 2.0 liter turbo does have an issue that I feel is worth mentioning. I can't show you because, like I said, this car does not have a turbo, but there is an electronic wastegate actuator that opens and closes the wastegate to control boost. That is a common failure point. They will throw codes, they will put the car into limp mode, and you will have absolutely no power. And you will also get a check engine light for that, so definitely be on the lookout for that as well. And last but not least, for under the hood, this is another turbo car concern. There is a vacuum assist pump for the vacuum brake booster. because a turbo car is not always pulling vacuum. Sometimes they are boosting, which is what a turbo is all about, forcing air into the engine. So they did have to install an electric vacuum pump to help assist the brakes. When those fail, they will actually pull the entire CAN network down, which is the communication area network for the car, and your dashboard will light up like an absolute Christmas tree. So that's just another, the turbo cars are fun. They make a little more power, but they do have a little bit more complexity. All right, guys, so here we are inside the Sonata. Let's go ahead, fire it up. Just going to show you that we have no active check engine lights on this car. This car is in good running shape. Just a couple issues in here that I do want to touch on. First and foremost, the radios on these cars can be very quirky. We have done a lot of replacements on these just for silly little glitches and defects. Hyundai uses what's called floater radios. So when you do get a new radio under warranty, it's not a new radio. It is a radio that has been refurbished, and sometimes they are hit and miss. We've replaced, in certain cars, I put 2 or 3 radios in until we got a good one. So do be on the lookout for that. Another common issue is not to be rude here. Please don't take offense to this. But if you are on the larger side, especially in the butt area, this piece here, this seat trim, is notorious for cracking and breaking. So just be on the lookout for that. That is something that would be covered under warranty. So definitely, if you're buying one of these, if you're getting one used, just give this a yank. Make sure that's nice and tight. Some other issues we see with these cars are the door lock actuators. That is the actual actuator in here with the latch assembly and the lock release. There's 2 cables. One connects to out here, one connects to inside. And what will actually happen, they fail in 2 ways. First, sometimes you will not be able to open your door from the outside or the inside. They are very tricky to get open when that happens, so definitely bring it to the dealer if you have that issue, because sometimes you have to dismantle the top of the door panel very carefully because you really need to have the door open to completely remove the door panel. Now, another way that they will fail is when you lock and unlock your car. This will not actuate. It'll usually only happen on one door at a time unless you have more than one fail. So definitely also be on the lookout for that. If you're buying one of these used, cycle the door locks back and forth, make sure they're working. Now towards the back of the car, there are actually 2 common failure points back here. Number 1 being the electronic release for the fuel latch. There was actually a recall on these. I believe that was on the 17 Sonata or the 15. It was one of those years. But they still fail rather common. If yours does fail, what you can go ahead and do is pop your trunk, and there will actually be a release right here so that you can manually open your fuel door. So if it does fail, it's not like you're stuck. You just have to, you have to release the fuel door from here. And while we have the trunk open, this trunk latch is also super common to fail. The way these fail is the trunk basically locks from the inside and the outside, so it's a little tricky to get these open. Sometimes you actually have to climb through the back seat to get in here and release this. But what sucks about that is to release these back seats, you need to get the trunk open. So it's a little bit of a procedure to basically break into the trunk through the back of the car and crawl through here and get these open. So just be on the lookout for that as well. Now here we have our shark fin antenna. This holds your antenna. It's basically for your XM and your satellite and your navigation if you have it. The FM antenna should be in this back window. So what happens with these is this is another thing that there was a TSB or a recall on. If you go through a car wash or something like that, these can easily be broken off. And the procedure to test these when they came in for their recall is literally to grab them and wiggle them and see if they break. I'm not going to do that on this car because it has already been done and I don't want to break it. They are very fragile, so be on the lookout for that as well. If you're going to buy one of these, just grab it and give it a little wiggle. Make sure it's not like glued on or double-sided taped on just to get you down the road until you leave, and then, the buyer tells you or the seller tells you to go pound sand. Now back here, the wheel hubs have ABS sensors built into them, the anti-lock brake sensors, the wheel speed sensors. They are a common point of failure, and Traditionally, the only way to replace that sensor is to replace the whole wheel bearing. If the car is under warranty, there is a procedure for you to replace just the ABS sensor. But if your car's got 70, 80, 90, 100,000 miles on it and that sensor goes bad, just put a new bearing in it. You know, that bearing's already got, you know, mileage on it. And what's to say after you pull it apart, replace the sensor, that the bearing's not going to go 2 weeks later. So if that does happen to you, just replace the whole thing. It's easier and less of a headache. Now, another issue that I want to talk about on these cars does not apply to this car. This is for the Eco model of the Sonata with the 1.6 turbo and the dual clutch transmission. Don't buy one. The dual clutch in those cars are absolutely terrible. They shift like crap. You know, when they lurch, they hesitate, they buck. They're awful. It was very hard for me to tell a customer with a straight face that the transmission is operating as intended, and there was nothing that I could do because that was literally the case. The transmissions were just awful. The 6-speed automatic that is in this car is actually a great transmission. They've been running a version of this since the 2010s. So it's tried, it's true, and it's a great unit. This was used in the 15 to 19 Sonata. And I believe they also use this transmission in the 11 to 14. So transmission in this car, you should have zero problems. Just change the fluid every 60,000 miles. Use Hyundai SPM4 and you'll have no issues. So now that we kind of went over the things that you should be looking out for if you own one of these or if you're buying one, let's look at the brakes on this car. That is the main reason that it is here. Luckily with these aluminum wheels, you can see basically your inboard and outboard brake pad. And if we look here, let me see if I can get you in there. There is plenty, there it is. There is plenty of meat on this outboard pad. And if you look here through this gap, you can actually see the inboard pad as well, which also has plenty of meat. So the left front brakes on this car are good. Let's go ahead, check the right side. Now I am going to be rotating these tires for this customer too, so when I get the wheels off, we'll take a better look. But you'll see here as well, there is plenty of material. If I can't get you in there, but there's plenty of brake pad material. So now let's go ahead. Let's take a look at the back. Oh yeah. All right. So the back brakes on this car are worn. So she's gonna need rear brakes. All right. So we're gonna let her know. So far, what I'm gonna recommend on this car is rear brakes. We're going to do, hopefully, pads and rotors. It makes sense. And I'm going to let her know about that transmission service. So let's go ahead. Let's jack the car up. Let's check the front end. We're going to give it a wiggle, make sure everything's tight. And, you know, just look under the car, make sure everything looks okay. All right, guys, so we got this wheel off the ground. We're going to go ahead. We're going to grab the wheel, give it a shake side to side. Everything feels nice and tight there. We're going to go up and down. This is going to check our wheel bearing. And the ball joint, everything looks good there. While I have the car up a little bit and I'm here, we're also going to check these tires using a tread depth gauge. This will tell us accurately exactly how much tread she has left. So she is at a 430 seconds on the outer edge of the tire, a 430 seconds on the middle, and 430 seconds in the back. So she is just about due for tires. Like I said, we are going to rotate these. The back tires do have quite a bit more meat left on them. We'll check them in a second. And that'll buy her some time. I told her she should get through the summer with these tires, you know, use up as much of them as she can. And then right before this winter, she's going to go ahead and get a new set of tires. That way she's ready for the snow this coming winter. So we got this side checked. Let's go check the passenger side. We're going to do the same thing, jack it up, give it a wiggle, check the tires. All right, guys, same thing over here. We're going to go side to side. Everything's nice and tight, top to bottom. Everything's good. Like I did before, we're going to check our tread depth. We have a 4 on the outer, 4 on the center, and we have a 5 on the inside. So I am going to recommend to her that when she does get tires to get her wheels aligned, that is an indication that we may have some alignment issues on here because this side is not wearing evenly. So we definitely want her to get that addressed before she gets her new tires, or while she's getting her new tires, so she doesn't wear out her new tires faster than she should. Now, I know before I did mention that we were going to do a rotation on these tires. We are actually not going to be doing that, and I'm going to show you why. The back tires on this car are actually what we call scalloped on the inner edge. So if we get down here and you look at the inner edge of this tire, you'll see that they're worn unevenly. We call that scalloping. Now that can either be an alignment issue, which it usually is on these cars. The toe goes out on these all the time. Or it could be a suspension issue, so we do want to just give the shocks a quick once over, make sure everything's good there. You can't really see it on the camera too well, but if you rub your hand across it, you can definitely see that they are scalloped. So we're going to leave these exactly where they're at, because if we move them up front, we can induce some vibrations. You can see the shock right here on this side, nice and dry. And if I come over here, we can also check this shock, take a peek at it. That shock is actually a little bit wet, so I am going to mention that to her. But, yeah, so we're going to leave these tires right where they're at. So let's go tell her what we found with the rear brakes. We'll see what she wants to do. So I hope this video helped you. Please like, share, subscribe if this video helped you. If you're buying one of these cars or if you own one, show you some of the common problems. We'll see you next time.